steps after Reigate College. Just to let you know that this meeting is being recorded, so a recording will be sent out after the meeting, along with the PowerPoint slides that go with this presentation. It might take a couple of days for you to receive those because we'll need to go through the transcript and so on before we send them out, but they will be sent out to you in due course. So welcome, as I said, to this evening's presentation. I'll just go over the programme for this evening. It is going to be a full hour, so if you're at home and there's somebody around that can make you a cup of tea or bring you something else to drink, I suggest you call on them to do that. We're very lucky to have with us Sam Crick from the 8 Billion Ideas, who are going to talk about the internship they're offering to our students. Then I will talk a little bit about how we as a college support students planning for their progression. Carolyn will then give you an overview of making a university application. I'll talk a little bit about student finance, and then we'll have our other panelist, Sue Taylor, talking to you about apprenticeships. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Sam Crick, who is going to talk to you about the opportunity that we're offering with 8 Billion Ideas.
Amazing. Good evening. Thank you very much, Mrs. Walkinshaw. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for having us today. I guess you've got some slides on the screen there. Just to give myself a quick introduction, I'm the College Engagement Lead at 8 Billion Ideas. If you're not familiar with 8 Billion Ideas, we are an award-winning education company that has a mission to give every single student on the planet the skills and belief to change the world. And we do this through future-focused learning. So building those skills that students will need when going into the working world. And we've had a very successful last couple of years, especially in the work experience placement. I know it's something that is really important for students across Reigate College. So the internship is a program that's going to be running this year for your child, and it's a 3-day program in which students can gain access to understanding a bit more about the workplace, as well as hear from guest speakers from industries such as LinkedIn, Google, IBM, and also the startup community. So it really gives a broad perspective of the world of work. If we just jump to the next slide, please. So this is a quick view of our website. We've got a new website launch, so please do check it out, 8billioниdeas.com. We've got information for individual students as well as for schools as well. And if we just jump to the next slide, we've got a case study here from a college that is also in the S7 group, Esher Sixth Form College, which actually hosted the internship last year, and we welcomed 487 students onto the program, and we've already had a large amount of sign-ups from Reigate. It's been great to already engage with many of the parents and the students, but obviously this is the first time that we're speaking to you directly about it. So the internship itself is this 3-day work experience program. Students will become interns as part of our research and development arm at the company, and they will be set a challenge by our CEO to come up with a business idea that is going to disrupt industries in 2023. So over the 3 days, they will go through experiences, which is our terminology for lessons, and they will develop these skills as a team and then build towards a final project. Each of the days will have their own guest speaker. Last year, we had 3 guest speakers from different industries. So we had a lady called Rebecca Schnaufer, who was from LinkedIn. She talked about the importance of the personal brand and building a digital profile for students, because from our experience and what we've seen in a lot of industries, many people will be looking at perhaps the digital profile of a student before they look at perhaps their CV that they send in. So it is vital that we build the skills needed for students to show their personal profile or professional profile, and that gave a really good insight into the world of LinkedIn. We also had Kieran Arokian Sami, who was part of Manchester Entrepreneurs, did a startup incubator, which saw students take an idea from just an idea all the way through to a developing business. So we had a really good mix. And what that, one of the most important parts that we found was it gave the students an opportunity to reach out to our team and engage throughout the 3 days. This isn't just perhaps a webinar where the students themselves will watch, but there's interaction throughout the sessions, and we've got facilitators that will deliver all of the content. If we just jump to the next page, please. So we've worked with Esher sixth form college. We're working with a lot of the different S7 colleges, and we're so excited to be working with Reigate this year. It's an amazing project for your child to sign up to. It also, I guess, checks that box of getting them work experience placement, and it also gives them a broader understanding of perhaps what they'd like to do in the future. Because as an education company, we often look at how education is shaping students, and we really believe that it's important for us to understand perhaps not what a student wants to do in terms of their job, but they need to know what their passions are, and they need to perhaps know what their skills are, and then we can work to develop that further. So if we just dive to the next slide. So here are some examples again of our guest speakers. We're going to be launching new guest speakers for the Reigate internship, and we can't wait for them to come forward and be able to speak with your student and really gain that experience of the workplace again. So if your child is interested, please do feel free to go to the college shop and you can sign up. £30 just for the 3 days, for the 3-day program, and will really give a good insight into the world of work. You'll be able to work with 8 billion ideas, and at the end of those 3 days, should your student, your child graduate from the internship, they will receive a paragraph from us that will be able to go on their CV or their UCAS application, or perhaps their LinkedIn profile, should they create one on our 8 Billion Ideas internship. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate the time that I've had, especially at the top of the show today. I really look forward to hearing further discussion. And if there's any questions that you have, you can email me. My email is samcrick@8billionideas.com. Equally, you can reach out to one of our team via our website. I hope everyone has an amazing evening, and thank you very much again for having me.
Thank you very much, Sam, for that introduction. So just to recap, there's just a few details about the internship here on this slide. So the dates are there. This has all been emailed to parents as well. It's actually the early bird discount, as you just missed out on that, is now £36 for the 3 days. And that's all the information there that you need about the 8 Billion Ideas internship, which will count as your son or daughter's experience of the workplace that they need to have completed during their first year here with us. Some other points just about how you can support your son or daughter with work experience. Please encourage them to look at other opportunities we advertise, as well as the 8 Billion Ideas opportunity that are advertised via the careers bulletin, and to check their college emails, because we often send out targeted emails to students we know might be interested in particular opportunities. And there are plenty of resources on the portal to help them apply successfully for work experience opportunities. So that's the first part of the evening, really, that I wanted to get over to you, the opportunities that we're offering for work experience and the importance of completing an experience of the workplace for students in their first year with us. Okay, so we're moving on now to the second part of the evening, which is me as well, I'm afraid, talking to you about how we as a college support students with their planning for what they'd like to do after they've left us. So we will be talking about the events and things that we have planned for students to help them with this. So as a college, these are the things that we do with students. Most of the things on this diagram I'll talk about in a bit more detail on further slides. But just before we go on, I just want to draw your attention to two things. First of all, the careers bulletin, which was mentioned in relation to work experience, that is emailed to students every single Monday during term time and is available for you as parents to view on the college website. And I'd really encourage you to have a look at that with your students to check what opportunities are available currently. And one of the things we advertise in the bulletin regularly are employer talks. So for instance, just tomorrow, we have a college alumni who is now a major in the British Army coming to talk to students who are interested in working for the British Army, applying for the Army. So there are regular opportunities advertised via the careers bulletin. So some of the other things on that diagram, coming up first and foremost, we have Get Ahead Day, which is this coming Tuesday. It's actually 9 o'clock till, sorry, the times on there, I realised are wrong. This year it's 10 o'clock to 3:15, but they have been emailed the correct times, and in the email that went out today, the times were correct. There are 4 parts to this day, and students follow their own personalised timetable for the day, so they're on a carousel completing these activities. All students will have a one-to-one meeting with their tutor. This will take place in person rather than on Teams now, because obviously we're back in person. They'll have a talk covering both university admissions and apprenticeship options. So they'll actually hear quite a lot of what you're going to hear as parents from Sue Taylor about apprenticeship options. Because our ethos for the day on Tuesday is that at this stage, students in the lower six are trying to keep their options open and researching both the university route and apprenticeship options. Later on in the year, when we come on to something called Progression Day, it's likely they will have a firmer idea about which route they want to go down. But at the moment, we'd like them to consider all of their options. There will also be a session about using Unifrog, which is an online destinations platform we have, and other resources to help them with their progression planning. And they will have the chance to actually go and speak to, in person, HE providers and employers at our careers fair. So we are lucky enough to have around 80 universities attending the careers fair that students can go and talk to. And they will be emailed a list of the universities that are going to be coming and the employers that are going to be visiting, so that they can prioritise which ones they want to speak to, because obviously they wouldn't be able to get around and speak to all 80 universities. As I said, they'll be following a personalised timetable that they'll be emailed. So that's Get Ahead Day on Tuesday. I mentioned about Unifrog, which they'll be using on Get Ahead Day. Unifrog is a little bit of a misleading name, I think, because the uni in Unifrog actually stands for universal, not university. So it does have information about apprenticeships and gap years and all sorts of different progression routes on it. And it also has useful materials to help them drafting personal statements and CVs, and has a range of how-to guides on everything from applying to apprenticeships to finding out about studying abroad. All lower six students have their login details for this, and they'll be taught a bit more about how to use Unifrog on Get Ahead Day on Tuesday. Unfortunately, we can't give parents login details, but if you could ask your son or daughter to show you Unifrog, that is a really good way of engaging with them about their progression planning. Students will then, the next stage that they'll be, the next time we'll have them off timetable talking to all of the students together about their progression planning, will be on Progression Day, which is on Tuesday, the 21st of June. There are, again, several parts to this day, and the focus of this day is more tailored to what students have narrowed down their choices to at this stage. So there will be sessions about upper sixth tutorial pathways, which I'll explain a bit more about shortly. There'll be a bit more about how to actually make an application, so drafting personal statements and CVs, and they'll have talks in different subject areas about progression routes related to their subjects. So if they study A-level PE, for instance, they will have talks about where an A-level in PE might be able to lead them, both in terms of university routes and employment routes. And they get some help and advice about how to manage their finances, because either way, if they are applying for university or if they end up going down the apprenticeship route, they will be, starting to live more independently. So we talk to them a bit about student finance. Yes. That date, the 21st of June, is a really important day. So it's important that students don't miss that for open days or other similar events. I can hear Sarah in the background with us. I can see one of our other panelists, Sarah Waters, the Deputy Principal, is typing away. If you do have questions, you can put them in the Q&A, because we do have Sarah Waters with us answering those questions. So if you'd like to put questions in the Q&A as we go through, she will try and answer them. Of course, there is only one of her, and I can see there's over 500 of you on the call, so she'll do her best. I mentioned in that last slide about upper sixth tutorial pathways. Following Progression Day on the 21st of June, and once students have received their progression exam results, they'll be able to opt to join a tutorial pathway for the upper sixth. So as you know, or you will be aware, your sons and daughters in the lower sixth have a tutor who is also one of their subject teachers. And that's really good in the first year as students are getting to know the college and get to grips with their subjects. In the upper sixth, we think it's more important for students to have a tutor who's going to be able to give them more specialist help with their progression pathway. And most students join one of two pathways. The UCAS pathway, which is for students that are applying to a range of different courses at university, or the apprenticeship and employment pathway, which, as you can imagine, is for students that are going down the apprenticeship or employment route. In a lot of cases, students are able to keep the same tutor from the lower sixth into the upper sixth year, but this does obviously mean that in some cases they will have a new tutor. As well as those two main pathways, there are 5 more specialist pathways. We have an Oxbridge pathway for students that are applying for Oxford or Cambridge. We now have, for the current upper sixth, we have heard which students have been made offers, and we've got 11 students that have been made offers to Oxford or Cambridge this year, so we're very pleased about that. So if that's something that you think your son or daughter might be interested in, there's a pathway for applying to Oxford and Cambridge. We have the MVD pathway, which stands for Medicine, Veterinary Science and Dentistry. We have the law pathway, a visual arts pathway, which is for students not just applying for fine art courses or fashion or textiles, photography, but also for film and media studies courses. And we have a performing arts pathway. So at the end of their lower sixth year, your son or daughter will need to decide which of those pathways they want to be on. Every year we do have students that choose a UCAS pathway and end up not applying to university, and we support them in careers with their apprenticeship and employment applications. And vice versa, we have a few students that initially at the start of this year were on the apprenticeship and employment pathway, but have ended up making a UCAS application. But we hope that by the end of the first year, most students, because of the advice they've had through Get Ahead Day, through tutorial, and having completed work experience, will know which pathway they want to be on. So just a quick word now about predicted grades. If you've already been through the process of applying to university with other children, you'll be aware that predicted grades are very important in applying to universities. The offers that universities make students are highly reliant on students having the correct predicted grades for the courses they're applying to. We have a predicted grade policy, and when you get the PowerPoint sent through, you can click on the link there, or you can see it in the policy section of our website. We do use a formula that takes into account the key assessment grades students are given at interim reports 2, 3 and 4, and their progression exam mark. We don't use the key assessment they got at interim report 1 because really they'd only just arrived here and it was based on a couple of weeks' work and not very fair, a very fair reflection of what they might be able to do. The formula is explained in the policy. For other non-A-level subjects, then the grades are based on actual exams they sit in those subjects and internal assessments throughout the lower sixth year. So as I said, particularly if your son or daughter's thinking about the university route, the predicted grade policy is an important thing to understand. It will be inevitable that your sons and daughters may need to miss some time off college, either to attend university open days or apprenticeship interviews, or perhaps if they're applying to Oxford or Cambridge or for medicine courses, university interviews, or if they're applying for performing arts courses, they may well need to attend auditions. Any such absences will normally be supported because obviously we appreciate they're necessary, but it's really important that students request that absence and it's properly logged. So please do ensure that they send any invitations to interviews or open days to attendance@reigate.ac.uk, and that way those attendances will be authorised. As I said, please do make sure that they don't, however, miss Progression Day or Equality and Community Day, which are compulsory days for open days and so on. Okay, so that was me going over what we do as a college to support students, particularly in their lower sixth year, in making decisions about what they would like to do in the future. Obviously, it's the students who ultimately are going to university or progressing on to employment. And I think one thing I want to get across this evening is that it's really important during their time with us that as parents and also us as staff here at the college, we do try and shift the responsibility from parents and teachers onto the students themselves in terms of doing the research and the planning and the preparation for going on to their next steps. Okay, so it's really important that they do regularly obviously attend tutor and tutorial, that they do make a point of reading that careers bulletin when it's emailed to them. They get lots of emails now they're at college. Every day they get the exciting email that tells them what Gavin has got on offer for lunch. And they get lots of other emails, but it's really important that every Monday they do read that careers bulletin, because that way they'll find out about lots of the opportunities that we offer them in terms of attending talks by employers or universities. They need to really fully participate and engage with the days that we offer. So Get Ahead Day this coming Tuesday, and later on in June, Progression Day. We need them to have completed their experience of the workplace, because that is very important in helping them make decisions about what they would like to do. And they need to obviously be using things like Unifrog. And ultimately, it all, we don't see ourselves in careers as separate to the curriculum team. We're very much part of that team, because ultimately they need to be achieving the grades to go on to do what they want to do in the future. And obviously we want them to stay positive, and there are lots of opportunities out there, more than ever. And you'll be hearing about some of the exciting apprenticeship opportunities there are shortly. As parents, I do appreciate it's quite difficult to be the parent of a young person and encouraging them to think positively about what they might like to do in the future. Some of you on the call probably know that I have a son who's in the upper sixth, so I do understand how tricky it can be to engage them with these sorts of conversations. I think a main thing I'll try and get across is to be positive. They have lots and lots of options. The university courses on offer are so exciting to look at. I always think when I'm looking at them with students how much I would like to be back in their shoes, having that sort of choice of courses. And likewise with apprenticeship opportunities, there are lots of opportunities on offer. We're also increasingly aware that some students might not be going down either of those traditional routes. They might be looking at things as forms of self-employment. And one thing the 8 Billion Ideas internship will really help them with is thinking about how they can support themselves in setting up their own businesses. So do talk to and try and engage your son or daughter about their progression plans. I think sometimes maybe kind of when we want to talk to them about the future, which might be on the way to college in the morning, might not be when they want to have a conversation about their future with us. So I think it is just trying to open up those conversations as often as possible. And just a plea from us as a careers department: if you are yourself an employer and you think that you could host some students at your workplace and offer an experience to the workplace, please do contact the work experience team on that email address there. Okay, so that is my overview of what we do as a college. I'm going to pass over now, literally pass the laptop across to Carolyn Langford, who is our head of careers, and she's going to talk to you about making a university or supporting your son and daughter making a university application.
That's super. Thank you very much for that, Ellen. Oops, sorry about the squeak. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a brief introduction really to UCAS. A little bit about the position at the moment. It was actually equal considerations deadline at 6 o'clock today. So we've got a little update on that and where we're at. Just a quick overview of what the effect of the COVID pandemic was for us all, really, these last couple of years in terms of apprenticeships and so on. A brief overview of the benefits of university, what we do to support your sons or daughters to decide what they would like to study, a bit about what the application process is looking like for the next cycle in 2023. A very brief overview of university admissions considerations, and also the types of things that we would want to be considering when choosing our university, and then just to signpost you to some resources which you might find useful. So what can I say? We've had an amazing year this year. We received in excess of 1,000 UCAS applications from our students this year, which far exceeded last year's, and out of that we had around 97 of students students who were former students of the college, as well as around about 27 of our students which were in the apprenticeship and employment pathway, which kind of underpins what Ellen was saying just a minute ago about how students sometimes decide that they might like to do a UCAS application, or indeed sometimes do both applications for apprenticeships as well at the same time. Yeah, so I don't think I need to kind of say too much about COVID. We've been living with it for the last couple of years. But obviously in that time, there were fewer opportunities for our students in terms of jobs and apprenticeships. And I'm sure Sue will be able to give us a bit of an update a bit later in the evening on that position at the moment. So there were fewer opportunities for students to be able to have things like gap years because of the travel restrictions. A lot of universities were obviously online with their learning in the same way as many schools and colleges were at that time. And there was no reduction in tuition fees either. So it was a really difficult time for our students in universities. You know, and to some extent, there may well have been a not ideal experience. So really our hope and expectation is that this next coming cycle is going to be a whole lot better than that. So why go to university? Well, one of the things that students might want to consider is gaining qualifications that are internationally recognised. Also thinking about the types of skills that they will develop for, you know, their working life. So, you know, not just those essential skills for now, but those skills that we need to use throughout our career. Also, that increased knowledge taught by subject experts, which will be second to none. And most importantly, perhaps, is enhancing those career opportunities. So there really is this opportunity for an increased earning potential. So it's estimated that the average salary for graduates is about 30% higher than it is for non-graduates within that 25 to 30 year span. So that's a really interesting thing to consider. And also there is the opportunity for our young people to gain that independence, build their self-confidence, and obviously to broaden their horizons, you know, notwithstanding those opportunities for that social aspect that university brings. So how do we as a college and a careers team support our students in terms of making those choices? So Ellen has already spoken a little bit about some of the special days that we have to support students, but also there are different types of online platforms. She mentioned Unifrog, but there's also things like the UCAS application area and website, as well as other platforms like Career Pilot, for example, which will not only help students to decide what type of career they might be interested in, but also what those entry requirements might be. Obviously, a passion for the subject is really, really important. And those days like Get Ahead Day and Progression Day will help students to be able to research that. Also, as part of that, you know, we offer a service in the careers team to help students to decide what career they might like if they're really struggling. So the application process for 2023 is likely to look very similar to the process for this year, and the equal considerations date is around about the same time. I'm not going to go through the whole bullet point list there, but you can see it's quite a comprehensive process. It's done online on the portal, which is really easy to navigate. We do provide the students with plenty of opportunities to go through their applications, you know, over that period of application time. Most importantly is thinking about course choices. So students have up to 5 course choices that they can choose, and we would always recommend that students include at least one very safe bet, if you like, so one that is certainly slightly below perhaps their predicted grades, so that there's no room for disappointment. And we try to discourage students from you know, putting down choices that are very, very aspirational. 1 or 2 is fine, but being very sensible about that. What will basically happen is the application will be completed by the student, and when they submit their application, it actually comes into a portal within the careers department, and we get a chance to check applications before they're actually sent to UCAS. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for us to have a discussion with your sons and daughters about that. There's a link on the PowerPoint presentation when it comes out to you about applying to university. It's just at the bottom of that slide there. And so you'll be able to have a little look at that if you feel you would like to. So in terms of admissions requirements, so a variety of different requirements might be needed depending on the institution that your son and daughter is applying to. All will require an academic qualification check, and that might also include an audition. Personal statements showing that genuine interest in the subject. And again, the careers team and tutors and staff are available to support your sons and daughters with the development of their personal statements. And also a reference from the college, which is uploaded by the staff at the college during that application process. Some universities will require an interview and others a pre-admission test. And this might be for particular skills and aptitudes which are linked to the course that they want to come to. And a few require a portfolio. So for example, a degree program in architecture, for example, might require a portfolio. So what types of things should students consider? I think first and foremost is the course that they want to apply for, and then secondly, their university. Now, if they're really struggling to know what type of career they might want to go into, then we can help via a careers interview, and I'll come back to that in a moment. It's really important when they're considering what they want to do, thinking about very carefully the entry requirements, in particular any specific GCSEs, because sometimes on a university website they're hidden away and they're not always terribly visible. It usually tends to look at, say, the BTEC level 3 programs or A-levels. Really important to consider the modules and the course content, and perhaps compare different courses at different universities to be sure it's exactly what they want to study and that they would be interested in. And also to consider things around employment prospects. So looking at that labour market information for that chosen career is really important. Facilities, obviously, and accommodation is really important. You know, you want your son and daughter to feel really comfortable about where they're going to spend the majority of their time for, 3, 4, maybe more years. And another consideration, obviously, is travel. Some of your sons and daughters might feel really comfortable living away from home at a distance, and others might want to feel they're a little bit closer to home. So it's considering the time and the cost of that travel and how far they are away. And obviously value for money. It's very expensive to go to university. So that's one of the things to really think about. So I mentioned at the beginning that if students are struggling to kind of establish what type of career they are interested in, and so therefore what their next steps would be, then they are able to organise for a careers interview. But what we would ask students to do, and it's new for this year, is to go on to our eStream platform and firstly to look at the short video on there about a careers interview. And there's also a leaflet there to be really sure that that's what they need. If it's a quick question or something that they just want us to check over, they can come and drop in anytime to the careers office at the college, and we will help. So this is a list of resources. I'm not going to click onto them now because you'll have an opportunity to do that once you get the slides. But these are some useful information sources there that you might find helpful to look at. So some information there around applying for university, a specific part of the website there, which is advice for parents and guardians. So it's well worth having a look at that. And some information around rankings. About rankings, one thing to consider also is the TEF badge. So TEF is a ranking badge which is very much about the quality of the teaching and delivery from the point of view of students. And so it was a badge mark, a bit like Ofsted will have badge marks, and the TEF guide will either provide a gold, silver or bronze rating, and they will often be advertised on the website. So it's well worth having a look out for those as well. There's a couple of sites there at the bottom, informed choices, which is really interesting. So This is particularly helpful if your son or daughter wants to choose a degree or where to study, particularly if it's a Russell Group university, but not necessarily. So that's well worth having a look at. And then we also have a lot of resources around the UCAS application process in our own careers area on the progression portal. So it's over to Ellen again. So I'm going to pass you along to talk about finance.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. I will also say that we'll have further Zoom meetings at the beginning of the upper sixth year, so in September, with more about the kind of nuts and bolts of the UCAS application process. So if your son or daughters decide they are applying to university, then there will be another meeting at the beginning of the upper sixth year, and we also hold a similar meeting about applying for apprenticeships. So I'm going to talk a little bit about student finance. I will put a caveat on this, that obviously we are an education provider, we're not financial advisors, so this is just basic information, and I would really, really encourage you to use the links that are in this PowerPoint when you get it sent around to do some of your own research as well. So as you'll be aware, there's often a lot in the media about the cost of university and whether university is a good value for money option. I would say that really is down to the individual to decide. I've put two statistics there. So the first one about from a higher education report about the amount of loans that students take out. And then I think probably quite a COVID affected statement there, or statistic there, that 32.9% only of current undergraduates felt university was value for money. I think probably heavily impacted by COVID, that percentage there. But that has to be obviously weighed against the various statistics that show that on average, over their working life, graduates will earn more than non-graduates. Obviously, that's an average, and there are plenty of people without degrees that go on to earn much higher salaries than those that do have degrees. Ultimately, I think it really is down to personal choice, and there are some things about the university experience that maybe can't be quantified in terms of how it might help the student develop as a person, not just develop their earning potential. So these are some just key points to get across. Student finance really takes two main forms. The tuition fee loan, which all students, as long as they meet certain eligibility criteria, so being resident in the UK and applying for courses that are eligible, will be entitled to. So students can apply for a loan to cover their tuition fees, and the vast, vast majority of students do that, regardless of their parental income. Maintenance loans are a little bit different. They are to cover your living costs. So as I said, the tuition fees are to cover your tuition fee loan is to cover your tuition fees, which are currently £9,250 a year. And that loan is paid directly to the university. So the students don't see a penny of it. Okay, they don't get chunks of sort of termly payments paid into their bank accounts that can be spent on anything else. That tuition fee loan goes straight to the universities. If your son or daughter is thinking about a course where there's what's called a placement year, so a year in industry or a year abroad, most universities will offer a reduced fee for that placement year, but you may well be surprised at what a high percentage of the normal fee it is, given that they're not actually in university for that year. Obviously, tuition fees can increase by the cost of inflation. They may be frozen, and there's even been some talk, fingers crossed, of them being reduced, but I wouldn't hold your breath about that. So that's the tuition fee loans. Then I was just going on to the next slide is about the maintenance loan, and this is the money to help students with their living costs. And this is paid into the student bank accounts because obviously they need then to be able to budget and spend that on these sorts of things. So their accommodation will be the biggest chunk of what they spend money on, but also phone, food, travel, any insurance they need, and socializing, of course. Now, the maintenance loan is different to the tuition fee loan in that it is means tested. So these are the statistics for the upcoming, so 2022 to 2023 academic year, which is the year before your sons and daughters will be going, but it gives you an idea of the sort of amounts of money that are available. And it does depend on where in the UK the student is studying, so whether they're in London or elsewhere, and whether they're living at home or at university, away at university. So 2 parts to the student finance: the student loan, so the student fees loan and the maintenance loans. Just a little bit about interest and loan repayments. Interest does start being charged from the day the first payment is made on those interests, so those tuition fee loans, and is compound interest. And the interest rate is based on the retail price index, so it can go up with inflation. Repayments, as you may well have heard, and you might well already be aware, students don't need to start repaying their loans until they are earning a certain amount of money, and the current amount there is £524 a week. But again, that may change. And the repayments are taken out of salaries in the same way as tax and national insurance are if a student is an employee, or through their tax returns if they are self-employed. So they won't need to worry about organising the repayments, neither can they avoid them. They just are taken out like our tax and national insurance is taken out. So when and how will you have to worry about applying for student finance? When students make their university applications, and we will remind them and you about this in September, we advise them all to say that they will be applying for student finance. It's much easier for them to state on their UCAS form that they intend to apply for student finance and then not apply for it later than it is for them to say they're not applying for it and then want to apply for it later. As you can imagine, if students say they're not applying for student finance, then the universities want assurances that they are going to be able to afford their tuition fees. The applications for student finance will open for you in the spring of 2023, and we recommend that students have applied for student finance by the end of May. The website will say that it only takes 6 weeks to process the applications, but obviously we don't want students, and you wouldn't want your sons and daughters having the kind of stress of worrying whether that's those fees are going to be paid. They will need to apply the details of which university they're putting as their firm choice they want to go to if they get the grades, but they can always change that later. And then parents are sent a link which they have to complete about household income details. It is quite straightforward. And we will again give you some more advice about it at the session we give at the beginning of the upper 6th year. Some of your sons and daughters may also be eligible for the disabled students allowance, and this is something that again you can find out about. It will cover any sort of extra or most of the extra costs they might have due to any long-term illness or other disability. And it's important to just check whether your sons and daughters might be eligible for that. There are, of course, other sources of funding, scholarships and bursaries that you can apply to, which often are means tested. Sometimes, though, they might be due to academic ability or sporting ability. Of course, there will be parental and other family contributions from most families, and that obviously is a matter for families to decide how that is going to work and how they're going to contribute, or whether they're going to contribute and what form that will take. Most students do have some sort of part-time job, whether that is during term time, when at wherever they're at university, or whether it's in the summer and sort of quite extended holidays they have at not just summer but also Christmas and Easter. That might be something that's worth considering if you know your son or daughter is going to need to have a part-time job to fund themselves. Thinking about the employment opportunities in the local area around a university is something that you might want to take into account when looking at university choices. You can also apply for paid internships. So some students may be able to apply for these mostly in their quite extended holidays that they have in the summer, and particularly useful if they're doing a course and they're thinking about going straight into employment after their university course. So there are other sources of funding available as well. Here are some useful websites. As I said, we would really encourage you to do your own research, and the links to the main websites we find useful are there. The UCAS website is helpful for understanding the process of applying for student finance, and Martin Lewis's website, the Money Saving Expert website, does have some kind of quite useful independent advice about managing student finances from a parent's perspective. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to that section about universities, and thank you also to Sue, who's been waiting in the wings to talk to you about apprenticeships. So this is the Parents Guide to an Introduction to Apprenticeships, and we will pass over to Sue now. And if Sue, you can say next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
Switty, we can. That's how we'll manage things. Thank you.
Super, and thank you very much for inviting me tonight. It's really great to be part of Reigate School again, Reigate College, and to introduce you a different side and talk about apprenticeships. So next slide, please. Okay, so firstly, what is an apprenticeship? And if you can click again. Okay, so firstly, I think it's really important to remember an apprenticeship is a job. You'll need to actually apply for an apprenticeship, but it will be a job that you're applying for, where you'll be paid a salary, and of course, as expected, you'll have a contract of employment. 80% of your time when doing an apprenticeship, oh, can we go back? I'll put my finger in the air. 80% of your time when doing an apprenticeship will actually be spent in the workplace. And probably when you're in the workplace, you'll be working alongside a mentor, usually a mentor that's already done an apprenticeship themselves. The other 20% is spent what we call off the job. Now that off the job can differ. It can be actually going off perhaps to a university for 1 day a week. It can be going to a university for a block release. Perhaps going working with the employer themselves, who will actually might be doing the training for your apprenticeship. So they all differ, and it's something you probably need to find out when you're doing an interview. What does the off the job look like? And they typically take between 1 to 4 years, and it's interesting to see, and I'll explain why as we go through. It says on here there are over 600 different apprenticeship standards you can do. When we last looked, which actually was last week, there are over 900 different apprenticeship standards that you can now do. And I'll talk about what a standard is when we get through to the employer bit. And apprenticeships start at intermediate level, level 2, going up to a degree level. It's really important if you choose to do an apprenticeship to understand, firstly, it is a real job. It's a real job with responsibilities that are going to get you the knowledge to actually complete your apprenticeship at the end. And I would say to everybody, and we'll talk about this, it isn't an easy option. And I've been working today actually in a school in Guildford with some year 12s and 13s about applying and what you have to do. And it isn't an easy option. And I'll explain that as we go through. So the different levels of apprenticeships, it's important to understand how the different levels work. So a level 2 apprenticeship, an intermediate level, is the equivalent of 5 GCSEs. A level 3 is 2 good A levels. And then the higher and degree apprenticeships, which I think you're really interested in, start at foundation degree and go up to a level 7, which is the equivalent of a master's degree. But the degree apprenticeships, level 6 and 7, are actually means you'd be doing your training within a university. But it's important to understand, and this is sometimes quite difficult to understand, is actually the higher and degree apprenticeships will get you to the same place. No one is better than the other. So actually, when you're searching and looking for your ideal next destination, don't knock out the higher apprenticeships, because there are some really good employers that offer higher apprenticeships. Okay, so the higher and degree apprenticeships, they've probably been around around 7 years now, quite a long time, and they're getting more and more popular. And the reason that is because what happened 3 years ago is something called the Apprenticeship Levy came out. The Apprenticeship Levy is a tax on employers with a payroll over £3 million. And what it actually means is the only way they can get this money that's taken out monthly from their accounts, the way they can get that money back is to actually spend it on apprenticeships. And that's why you are beginning to see many of these large companies offering higher and degree apprenticeships. They're great. You're in learning 80% of your time on the job, just the same as the lower levels, and 20% I spent with a university or a training provider. You're paid a salary. There's no debt at the end of this. Everything's paid for by the government, and you get experience. Now, when I'm talking about these apprenticeships to young people, I actually think, I know the debt's something to consider. I've had 2 girls that have gone to university. I'm not against university in any way whatsoever. But what I find valuable, and talking to other apprentices that have done this route, is the experience they gain within an organisation, that once they're in there and they're actually working with that organisation, that companies aren't training them to lose them at the end. The companies are training them for a reason, because actually they want to keep them after their apprenticeship. And they are already on some quite high salaries, but we can talk about that when I show you that slide. Okay, and again, please. Okay, so the range of apprenticeships, because the apprenticeship levy that came out, this is what has meant that there's more and more apprenticeships that you can actually do. It's a bit of a funny one, this, because it's not like when I mentioned there's 900 different apprenticeship standards that you can now do. Although there are 900 different apprenticeship standards, you can only apply for an apprenticeship if there is a job there at the time. That's important, because it's not like looking through a college prospectus or a university prospectus, seeing all of these opportunities and thinking, oh, I would quite like to do that. You actually have to ensure that there is the job there to support your apprenticeship. And you'll see such things on here, things that you might have imagined before, such as engineering, beauty for doing hairdressing, perhaps becoming an engineer. But more and more different areas have come to the market, such as we work with quite a lot of business companies and looking in their audit, working as a manager, perhaps going into HR. You can now do that as an apprenticeship. And health is really, really growing now. There's a big nursing program, physiotherapy you can do by doing an apprenticeship. The NHS is actually the largest levy payer in the whole of the country, so you can see why they are moving quite a lot of their occupations into the apprenticeship program. Law, I was actually at the Apprenticeship Awards a few years ago and met the first ever paralegal that had gone through the level 7 apprenticeship program and had really enjoyed doing this route. You can become a solicitor. And the other area, I think, which is really large now, is certainly the digital and IT. And throughout COVID, I saw many opportunities through digital and IT. Okay, moving on, please. And one more. And these are some of the large levy payers that we work with. And it's worth mentioning a few of them. I know them well, is such people as IBM. They've always offered really good apprenticeship programs, and you can go in to become a project manager with IBM, earning very large salaries very early. Network Rail, we've seen more and more opportunities there on the engineering side, really good opportunities. BAE Systems are worth a mention. BAE Systems probably posted more apprenticeship vacancies over the COVID period than probably any other organisation in our area. Not on here, but worth a mention, are Unilever and Nestle, local companies who always offer really good apprenticeship programs, and I talk and see their apprentices out and about. Now, the Government Office certainly have been advertising some very prestigious apprenticeship opportunities if you fancy sorting out the government and going and working in there. Okay, we also tell people to look inside the company. So you might imagine that you want to do one of these, work in one of these sectors, but actually some people actually go and work, say, in the legal departments of some large organisations doing their apprenticeships. The HR opportunity I saw recently was with BP based over in Staines. So that would be another area you could go into. Every company will have a lot of these departments, IT departments, logistic departments, facilities management, and you might find you go and work for one of these large companies and you actually might be doing an apprenticeship in something that doesn't really look what it is on the tin of that company. So great opportunities, and that's why it's really important when you start doing your searches, you keep your searches open, and I'll explain how that works. Okay, next one, please. So I had a look to see how many vacancies there were near you. Now, the vacancies, and I sent the slides over a couple of weeks ago, but the vacancies are just going up and up in all areas, in higher and degree as well, and they still are. And I think that's really interesting as well. We don't actually understand why we've got so many vacancies at the moment, whether it's the levy, more employers actually advertising. We actually did see still quite a lot of apprenticeship opportunities throughout COVID, but they are now really, really growing. As you can see on this slide, just within 20 miles, there were over 1,300. There's probably even more than that this week. So I had a look at some of the actual apprenticeship opportunities. Now, salaries are really interesting. A couple of years ago, when I was out doing these talks in schools, we were probably looking at starting salaries for degree apprenticeships of around 15,000. And you can now see they are getting really competitive, starting at 18,000. I never like it when companies put competitive salary, because I think they should tell us exactly what it is. But you can see there are really good salaries. Now, what happens with apprenticeship vacancies is they can come on at any time. Whenever an employer decides they want to actually take on an apprentice, they don't always think like we do and realise that young people will need a start date of probably September of the following year when they're advertising their opportunities. Now you can see on this slide that some are getting quite clever to that, and they are actually wanting your sons and daughters, so they are advertising and making sure that they've got start dates of September 22, which is great, because then you can apply for those, perhaps alongside applying for university, and you will then know, hopefully you've got an offer and you will be able to start the job the following September. But there are still a lot that come on throughout the year. And I think that's something to keep looking, keep understanding. Perhaps even some people go off to university and university doesn't work out for them, that you actually haven't necessarily completely lost out. There will still be opportunities. And these were ones that I just picked out. There's also, I'm holding it up now, this little book, which is the higher and degree apprenticeship listing, which I can send to the college. The only problem is, by the time we get them, they are already out of date. It was created in November and I only received it last week. So these little brochures are good though. I work with young people today, but they're also very good to work with some of your young people in year 12, because you can actually have a look at what vacancies are being advertised this year. And generally, quite often those companies are still will still be advertising for more the following year. Okay, next slide, please. So how do you go about finding an apprenticeship? Well, this is one of the ways. You register on the gov.uk, find an apprenticeship website. I did a workshop today. We went on there and we had a look, and there were a lot of higher and degree apprenticeships still being advertised. The problem is, though, you do have to keep on coming back to this website. And I think it's great if parents do get involved and come and have a look, because you will find that it changes all the time. Parents need to be on board to actually support this and actually keep an eye when you're doing mocks and A-levels and all the other exams that you're doing, that you do still keep an eye on this. At the moment, you're not going to be applying for something, it won't be till year 13, but it's still worth looking what companies are asking for. It's quite rich in showing us what companies want, so it's always worth having a look. Okay, next slide, please. And where else would you look? Okay, it's if you know what you want to do, sometimes it's quite easy. You can look on company websites, go into those companies such likes as Dyson and KPMG, Deloitte, all of those companies. I don't usually see them advertising on Find an Apprenticeship website. So actually we need the young people to actually be researching and looking on the company websites. Social media is another area of sometimes the local councils and actually Surrey County Council offer opportunities through social media. And all of you, family, friends, you might work for large organisations and know of opportunities. They can always be shared with the college, but also, you know, shared amongst you, because you might think, wow, my company is really doing well. I know, actually, I often use Reigate as an example. When I first used to come to Reigate and talk about the apprenticeship levy, and I'd ask in the audience, does anyone know about it? Hardly anyone would put their hand up. And actually, as the years went by, more and more of the audience did know about the apprenticeship levy within their organisation. So it's really worth talking to people you know as well, always is. Okay, next slide, please. I think that's it. That brings me to the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Sue. That was really, really helpful overview. And if you've got sons and daughters that are interested in apprenticeships, during National Apprenticeship Week, which is the week before half term, we're going to have some people coming in to speak to students. So those talks will be advertised in the careers bulletin, and we'd really encourage your sons and daughters to come along, and they can find out some more about apprenticeships. And they will be getting a version of Sue's talk at Get Ahead Day next week as well. So thank you again to all our panelists, and thank you to Sarah, who's been taking your questions in the background. Just a little bit of points to follow up before we wrap up. First of all, this PowerPoint will be sent out. Please bear with us. It might take a couple of days. A reminder to ask your sons and daughters to make sure they read the careers bulletin, and to make sure that they do obviously attend and participate in Get Ahead Day on Tuesday. They have all been sent already a survey to complete ahead of Get Ahead Day, so that their tutor has a little bit of information about what their current thinking is about what they might like to do ahead of their one-to-one interview with their tutors. So if you could just remind them to complete their Get Ahead Day survey, that would be really helpful. Thank you very much for listening. As I said, there will be further Zoom meetings at the beginning of the upper sixth year. If you have any questions that haven't been answered in the chat, then of course you can email careers@reigate.ac.uk. So thank you very much, and goodbye from both myself and Carolyn, who'll give us a wave. And enjoy the rest of your evenings. Thank you very much.